The wilderness of Northern California is a deceptive beauty. To the outsider, it is a postcard of towering pines and sweeping vistas. But to those who know the high country, the Plumas National Forest is a vast, indifferent silence that keeps its secrets buried deep beneath the snow. It was here, in the bitter, unyielding winter of 1978, that reality seemed to fracture, giving birth to a mystery so baffling, so devoid of logic, that it has become the American haunting equivalent of the Dyatlov Pass incident. This is not merely a story of men getting lost, it is a story of a journey into madness, a narrative where the clues do not lead to answers, but only to a darker, more profound darkness. Imagine, if you will, the sound of the wind howling through the Rogers Cow Camp, a remote outpost nearly exactly in the middle of nowhere. It is June 1978. The winter snows, which had been historically brutal that year, have finally begun to recede, peeling back the white sheet that had covered the landscape for months. A group of motorcyclists on a weekend ride stumble upon a Forest Service trailer. It is a sturdy structure designed to offer shelter to rangers, stocked with propane, matches, and heavy clothing. But as the riders approach, the air feels heavy. A window is broken. The smell of decay, sweet and cloying, drifts out to meet them. Inside, wrapped in sheets on a bed, lies the emaciated body of a man. He has been dead for months. But the horror is not just in his death, it is in the way he died. He starved to death, surrounded by enough military-grade rations to feed all 5 of them for a year. He froze to death in a trailer with a propane tank that was full and matches that were never struck. This was the first domino to fall in the strange case of the Yuba County 5, a discovery that would unravel the quiet lives of 5 families and leave investigators staring into an abyss of unanswerable questions. To understand the end, we must go back to the beginning, to a Friday night that held nothing but the promise of joy. It is February 24, 1978. In the valley towns of Yuba City and Marysville, roughly 50 miles north of Sacramento, the air is crisp but manageable. The 5 men at the center of this tragedy were best friends, bound together not just by their geography, but by a shared simplicity of spirit. There was Bill Sterling, 29, a man of deep religious faith and gentle demeanor. Jack Hewitt, 24, who relied heavily on his father and struggled with simple tasks but loved the camaraderie of his friends. Ted Wire, 32, a man with a childlike innocence who loved waving at strangers and whose friendly nature was the glue of the group. Jack Madruga, 30, an Army veteran and the driver of the group, proud of his turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego. And finally, Gary Mathias, 25, the outlier of the group. Mathias was an Army veteran as well, but he carried a heavier burden. He was a diagnosed schizophrenic, though his condition was managed with medication, and by all accounts he had been stable and lucid for a long time. They were the Gateway Gators, a basketball team formed under a rehabilitation program for adults with mild intellectual disabilities and mental health challenges. And they were excited. The next day, Saturday, they were scheduled to play the first game of a week-long tournament sponsored by the Special Olympics. The winner would get a free week in Los Angeles. For these men whose lives were often defined by limitations and routines, this was the Super Bowl. This was everything. On the evening of February 24th, they piled into Madruga's prized Mercury Montego. Their destination was Chico, California, a drive north to watch the UC Davis basketball team play against Chico State. They were in high spirits. They wore their street clothes, ill-equipped for anything other than a heated car and a gymnasium. They watched the game, cheered, and basked in the excitement of the night. After the game, they did what any group of friends would do on a Friday night road trip. They stopped for snacks. They pulled into Bear's Market in downtown Chico just before closing time. They bought Hostess fruit pies, cherry and lemon, a quart of milk, and some candy bars.
The clerk remembered them vividly. He remembered they were annoyed because he didn't have the specific type of pie they wanted, a trivial detail that anchors them in the mundane reality of the living just moments before they vanished into the ether. This is where the map of logic ends and the map of the impossible begins. From Chico, the route home to Yuba City is a straight shot south down Highway 99. It is a flat, easy drive, barely an hour long. It is a road Madruga knew well. But they never went south. Instead, the Mercury Montego turned east onto the Oroville-Quincy Road. This road does not lead home. It leads up. It winds its way into the Sierra Nevada mountains, climbing higher and higher into the dense, unforgiving forest. Why? Why would 5 men, excited for a game the next morning, afraid of missing their curfew, turn away from the safety of the valley and drive into the teeth of a brewing snowstorm? Did they take a wrong turn? It seems impossible. The difference between the flat highway of the valley and the winding, elevating mountain road is stark. Did they chase someone? Were they being chased? The car offered no clues. Days passed. Parents called police. The community began to search. On February 28th, 5 days after they vanished, a forest ranger made a discovery that deepened the mystery. The Mercury Montego was found. It was stuck in a snowbank on a desolate logging road, miles from the pavement, at an elevation of 4,400 feet. But the car wasn't crashed. It wasn't totaled. It was simply parked. The front wheels had spun in the snow, but 5 strong men could have easily pushed it free.
The gas tank was a quarter full. The engine was in perfect working order. Inside, investigators found the wrappers of the Hostess pies, the empty milk carton, and the program from the basketball game. The car was unlocked. A window was rolled down, letting the snow pile onto the seats, but the keys were gone. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no dents. It was as if the car had simply stopped and the men had evaporated. The police towed the car down the mountain. They found that the undercarriage was pristine. This was a low-riding sedan driving over a rough, rocky logging road in the dark. Yet there wasn't a single scratch on the muffler or the oil pan. Madruga, the driver, had navigated this treacherous terrain with supernatural precision, only to abandon the vehicle when the road became impassable due to snowdrifts. As the search intensified, a blizzard rolled in, burying the mountain in feet of fresh snow. The search was called off, halted by the very whiteout conditions that had likely swallowed the boys. But before the silence took over completely, a voice emerged from the darkness. A witness. Joseph Shans, a local man, had driven up that same road on the night of February 24 to check the snow levels for a ski trip. His car had gotten stuck. While trying to push it out, he suffered a mild heart attack. As he lay in his car, in pain and terrified, he saw lights. Headlights. A car pulled up behind him. He saw people, figures, getting out. He called for help, screaming into the night, but the lights went out. The figures went silent. Later, he saw what he described as flashlights moving in the woods, and he heard a whistling sound. He claimed he saw a woman holding a baby in the headlights, though investigators later dismissed this as a hallucination brought on by pain and exhaustion. But he was adamant about the other car. He was there when the Montego arrived. He saw them, and they, presumably, saw him. Why didn't they help? Why did they turn off their lights and sit in the dark? Was Sean's plea for help misinterpreted by the 5 men as a threat? Did they think the man in the car was hurt? Or did they think he was a danger? Fear is a powerful contagion. If one of them panicked, it could have swept through the group like wildfire. The winter dragged on. The families waited in an agony of suspended hope. Then came June, and the discovery of the trailer. The body in the trailer was Ted Ware. The details of his demise are the stuff of nightmares. Ted had lived for anywhere from 8 to 13 weeks after the disappearance. He was found tucked into a bed, sheets pulled over his head. His feet were badly frostbitten. But here is the horror. The trailer was a survival station. It had a propane tank that could have heated the place for weeks. The valve was never turned on. It had a fireplace and wood, unused. It was stocked with dozens of sea rations, military food, cans of stew, peaches, desserts. Most of the cans remained unopened. Ted Ware had lost nearly 100 pounds. He starved to death in a room full of food. He froze to death in a shelter that could have been warm. Why? Why did he not eat? Investigators speculated that perhaps the men, conditioned by their institutional backgrounds or strict upbringings, felt they weren't allowed to touch the property that didn't belong to them. Or perhaps in their mental state, they couldn't figure out the propane valve. But they had opened some cans. They had used a P38 can opener found on the scene. They knew the food was there. As the snow melted further, the mountain gave up the rest of its dead. Several miles from the trailer, the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found. They were nothing more than scattered bones, ravaged by scavengers. They lay on opposite sides of the road, as if they had sat down to rest and simply never stood up again. The autopsy, what could be done of it, suggested hypothermia. Further away, the father of Jack Hewitt, who had joined the search parties every single day, found his own son. He found Jack's backbone under a manzanita bush. He identified his son by his shoes and his jeans. It was a moment of sorrow so profound, it feels intrusive to even describe it. 4 bodies found, but there were 5 men. Gary Matthias, the man with schizophrenia, the man who had served in the army in Germany, who had drug problems in his past but had turned his life around. Gary Matthias was never found. His tennis shoes were found in the trailer. This suggests he made it that far. But he had left the trailer likely wearing Ted Ware's leather shoes, which were missing from the trailer. And Ware had big feet, Matthias did not, so the fit would have been loose. The fate of Gary Matthias remains the ghost in the machine of this story. Did he lead them there? Some theories suggest that Matthias stopped taking his medication, or that the stress of the night caused a psychotic break. Did he hallucinate that they were being chased? Did he navigate the car so perfectly because of his military driving experience? Was he the one who kept them from eating the food or turning on the heat, driven by some paranoid delusion that they were hiding? Or are there more tragic, heroic possibilities? Did Matthias, the most physically capable of the group, take Ware's shoes because his own were wet and frozen? Did he leave the trailer to try and walk out of the wilderness to get help for his dying friend, only to perish somewhere in the vast green ocean of the Plumas National Forest, his body hidden in a ravine or a cave where no searcher has ever looked? The questions circle endlessly. Why abandon the car? The walk from the car to the trailer was 19 miles. 19 miles uphill, in deep snow, in tennis shoes, and light jackets. It was a death march. Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga didn't make it. They died on the road. Jack Hewitt made it part of the way. Only Ted Ware and Gary Matthias definitely reached the trailer. The feat of endurance required to walk 19 miles in those conditions is staggering. It speaks to a singular driving purpose. They weren't wandering aimlessly. They were going somewhere.
Was it the lights in the sky? At the time, UFO sightings were rampant in the area. Some suggest they followed a light. Others suggest a case of folie à deux or folie à plusieurs, a shared madness where the delusions of one person, Matthias, are accepted as reality by the others. If Matthias said, "We can't go back, they are waiting for us," the others, who trusted him, who looked up to him,
might have followed him into the dark without question. There is also the theory of an encounter at the market. Did someone follow them? Did they witness a crime in the parking lot of the basketball game and flee in terror? The police found no evidence of foul play, no evidence of a second vehicle pushing them off the road. But the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. The trailer itself offers one final chilling clue. When Ted Wire was found, his beard had grown significantly. He had lived for months. He was alone at the end. Imagine the darkness of those nights, the wind shaking the trailer walls, his friends dead in the snow miles behind him, Gary Mathias gone, just Ted, huddled under a sheet, hungry, cold, waiting for a rescue that was looking in the wrong place. The mental anguish he must have endured is the true horror of this story. Decades have passed, the families have aged, and many have passed away, taking their grief to the grave. The Mercury Montego was eventually scrapped, its secrets crushed into a cube of steel. The trailer was dismantled, but the road remains. The Yuba-Quincy Highway still winds its way through the towering pines, a beautiful, lonely stretch of asphalt that feels disconnected from the rest of the world. The case of the Yuba County Five remains open, but it is cold, cold as the snow that buried them. It serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the terrifying indifference of nature. We want answers. We want a villain we can handcuff, or a mistake we can point to and say, there, that is what went wrong. But this story denies us that satisfaction. It leaves us only with the image of 5 young men frozen in time, driving away from the lights of the valley, driving away from their lives, ascending into the silence. In the end, the Plumas National Forest kept Gary Mathias. It kept the reason for their journey. It kept the logic of their demise. And as long as the wind blows through the canyons of the Sierra Nevada, whispering through the trees where the boys walked their final impossible march, the mystery will remain. A haunting American legend, a tragedy written in snow, erased by the sun, and remembered only in the aching void left behind.